In this section, when we talk about leadership, we're going to talk about it really in two different parts. The first is about flawed leadership styles. What are those things that we don't want to do? What are some of the leadership styles that are damaging to people's careers? And then the second part is about the leadership competencies that we want. What are those things that leaders have that really serve them well? This presentation comes from work by Dr. Ralph Brody. There's actually a later textbook, later edition, but this one in 2005 had a really good presentation about leadership styles and competencies that I liked. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'm always surprised when I talk about this in class how often the students will say, oh yeah, I have a boss just like that, or I had a boss like that, and tell sort of horror stories about their experiences. So I think that Dr. Brody did a really good job of identifying some of these styles because it really does seem to hit home with a lot of people who hear this presentation. So the flawed leadership will get us on a downhill slope that doesn't go too well, like our little penguin friend here, and that's what we want to avoid. The first one is the oblivious manager. Just like the graphic shows, that's the little baby duck kind of manager that thinks that the best leadership is no leadership at all, and that will assume that people know what to do. And I think that's a big danger, just to assume people know, because a lot of times people do not know. And so it's a dangerous thing to assume that people will know and do what they're supposed to do. So the oblivious manager is very passive, doesn't get clear directions, and sort of takes the attitude that, well, whatever you want to do, it's fine with me. So obviously not leading at all, but just being present. The misleader is the one that can give wrong messages to the staff all the time. Sort of comes from the stance that I'm the boss and I'm always right, but they never know which reaction to expect. The misleader is not consistent and makes staff very anxious because you never know which boss is going to show up based on what situation. One of the damaging things about that is that this kind of leader can expect very little loyalty from his or her staff because they don't know what to expect. They don't know who it is that they're dealing with. The put-downer, this is one that people really seem to talk a lot about in class. It's really amazing that this happens as often as it does. But this is the leader or the boss who humiliates their staff in front of other people. What it really says is, I don't value my staff, and quickly can generate a lot of resentment. I'm always surprised at the number of times that bosses are shocked when their staff sort of rises up against them, or may even do things like go to the board or to file complaints, and they're stunned that this happened, but it's almost predictable. But if you put people down and put people in a corner, that you're going to get that kind of resentment that will be, sometimes people will stand up for it eventually. And what this message really says to the staff is, I think you're incompetent. So the put downer feels like, I've got the right to do that. You're incompetent. I could put you down and embarrass you in front of your peers. Well, we all know this one, right? This one's one of the most common. The micromanager, that's the one who has his hands, her hands in everything. Overly involved, won't even let people do their job, has to be there. The thing about it is that the micromanager gets some kind of satisfaction from this. That somehow feeds a person's ego to think, oh, nobody can do this but me, so I have to go in and do everything. Or people can't work without my direction, so I have to really manage this and be on top of it. And again, feed some need that they have for that kind of over-involvement. The arrogant manager is the manager that struts around, kind of like our little, whatever that is, ostrich, whatever bird that is we have on the screen, but struts around and has an exaggerated pride about their position and their importance. Thinks that people should follow them without question. I'm the boss, so that's it. You should follow me. Often overbearing and feel like the staff should comply. Just because I'm the boss, they should comply. The narcissist is the one that's willing to take credit for all their employees' good works. They'll manipulate people for their own self-promotion, and so it's all about themselves. What can I get out of this organization, of the employees that will promote me? This lone wolf, the loner leader, alleged leader, is the person that keeps their door shut all the time, doesn't go to lunch with people, really would rather just be left alone, has very little employee contact, rarely consults with staff on decisions, and just gives the message in many ways, I don't want to be bothered. Often this can result in low staff morale, just from people not feeling like they're included, not feeling like they're part of the organization. The charmer, this is the good time Charlie boss, who wants to be loved by everybody. Popularity is more important than achievement for this person. A good image is substituted for results. So it's the fun boss, love me boss, but sometimes not the very effective or goal-oriented boss. And then there's the mistruster, and that's the one that constantly checks up on the staff. Believe people are going to steal, believe people are going to take advantage. From my experience, the leaders that are the most like this are the ones who themselves are not very trustworthy. It's my belief that people see that in others because they see it and recognize it in themselves. This is the one who's always checking on employees, overly suspicious. And what happens so many times is staff becomes really anxious, feel like they're always under the microscope. Something's going to be found out, or they'll be accused of something, and many times are pretty much immobilized to where they can't really make decisions. So these are all the different kinds of flawed leadership styles, the ones we want to guard against. And think about your experiences. I would guess that almost everybody looking at this presentation can think of some boss they've had or have now that fits in some of these categories because they're so common. And so you want to think about those and make sure that you're not perceived that way by your employees when you're in a position of leadership. So what's the flip side of that? What's the competencies? Well, the first one is to always to articulate a future orientation. That is, not looking at the past, not being so stuck in the day-to-day operations of the present, but to look for the future. Where are we going with this? So the real leader is constantly looking for a way to improve and thinking about where are we going, and looking at, it's almost like, the leader is the one who can climb up the pole and look into the future and say, what are the demographic trends coming? What's happening with our clients we serve? What's happening in funding? What's the political future here? And how's this going to affect our organization? So it's really been able to be a big picture thinker and to look in the future at what's coming down the line here. Competent leaders are never satisfied. We can always do it better. Things can always happen. There's always that desire for continuous improvement to promote growth and change. There's a lot of that present in the total quality management materials. We've touched on that a little bit, or will. That constant improvement, total quality improvement, constant quality improvement, those things that always say we're working all the time to get better. We're learning. We're a learning organization. You've heard and we'll hear more about being a social entrepreneur or about social entrepreneurship. This is the leader that's willing to take risk and, if necessary, willing to fail sometime. Leaders who are entrepreneurs don't want to fail. They don't take unnecessary risk, but they're willing to fail if it becomes necessary. The main thing about being a social entrepreneur is to be tenacious and to persevere during hard times. So to have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, to keep going, to work through the hard times, to keep going towards that future orientation, that future state that you mapped out for the organization. Social entrepreneurs are motivated by the joy of achievement. Dr. Hofer and I have been doing some really interesting work, on the joys of being an administrator. And that's where social entrepreneurs get a lot of the fuel to keep them going, that they get that joy of achievement, that we tried something, we did it, we've served our clients, and there's joy in that. And that's a lot of what keeps a social entrepreneur moving forward. So again, they seek constantly to make a contribution, to improve, and to thrive on the challenges of what it takes to make things happen. The next competency is just treating staff with dignity. You'd think that would be a basic, but sometimes it's really not. As leaders, we want to minimize the command language, the orders. We want to substitute that with request language. Dr. John Gottman is kind of the leading researcher in marriage and relationship, and he talks a lot about soft startup. His research shows that you can find out in the first 3 minutes how a conversation or conflict is going to go between a couple. And I think that's true for administrators too. I think if you think about those interactions, you can think pretty much in the first minute or two how this interaction is going to go. And it has a lot better chance of going well if it started with a soft startup rather than an accusation or a demand. And so that's part of that dignity, is how do we relate? How do we minimize that command language and to put it in the language of persuasion and request? And we're going to do some more work later about persuasion. How do you persuade people to your way of thinking or to do what we need to do for the organization? Treating staff with dignity is a way to promote that creative climate. That's what we want, is a positive climate for people to do their work so people are comfortable and can move forward. And it shows care and concern if we treat the staff well. And what happens is that then if we set that tone, that then they will serve our clients well and treat our clients with dignity. You always think about that the leader is really setting the tone, the climate for the entire organization. So you want to treat your staff in the way that you want them to treat the people they serve and the way they treat people in the community. Another competency is communicating significant messages. I'm not sure this is a great technique with the megaphone, but I like the slide anyway. But to communicate significant messages on 2 levels. First, on the intellectual level, to make sure people understand what it is that you're trying to communicate, but also on an emotional level. And that goes throughout the organization, with staff, with the constituency, with donors, that you're always communicating on those 2 levels: intellectually, that for people to understand it, of what you're trying to say, but that they get it in here, that emotionally they understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish with the organization. Also remember that listening is also a valuable skill. Communicating is not one way. Listening is a very important communication. The old thing about management by walking around. I used to find that a lot. The campus at Methodist Mission Home was about 30 acres, and I would just get out and just kind of walk around. I'd be amazed what I could learn, but just talking to people, just getting out of your office. And it's easy to get stuck, just being in your office in the executive area. You get out, talk to people, be amazed what you'll hear. And that's part of management by walking around. So it's not just giving messages, but you can give and receive messages effectively. Engendering trust is huge. What you want to have is a deep sense of integrity, for people to really know that you're a person of integrity and that they can trust you. And it's like a bank account. Sometimes you'll go through hard things with staff or with a particular staff member. But if you think about it like a bank account, it's again kind of like a relationship. If you've got a lot of credits in the bank, if you've made lots of positive deposits, you can get through the hard parts when you have to make a withdrawal. You may have to reprimand someone or to disagree with someone. But if there's that basic trust there, you can get through that. And that's why trust is so important, that you build that in the good times so that you've got trust to fall back on even in the hard times. Staff need to know that you're really committed to the cause. If you don't really believe in the organization, get out of it. Don't work there. Find a place you do believe in, because people can see it. Staff will know. The community will know. You have to have that real sense of commitment, and that's a part of trust, that they trust that you are there. And lead by example. The old thing about don't ask your staff to do anything you wouldn't do. And look for symbolic acts. Sometimes, go out of your way to do something that the staff may not think you would do, as far as in a way of serving them or serving the clients, as a symbolic act, because that's another way to build that kind of trust and relationship. And again, that's got to be earned over time. You don't build trust in the middle of a crisis. You build trust over a long period of time. And it's probably the greatest thing you have of assets as leaders, that you have trust of people that you work with and that you serve. And then finally, to inspire top-level performance, to set high, achievable expectations. And again, I think one of the key words there is achievable. So reach high, but make sure they're achievable. Don't frustrate people by setting goals that can't be reached. You want to set standards of excellence, to be able to stretch but not overwhelm staff, to take them at the pace. You may be up there looking way out in the future, but your staff may not be able to get there with you at the same time. So take them a step at a time. Don't try to do it all on the same day. Think about the timing of that and how you bring them along to get to where you want to go. And allow staff to make their own decisions. Don't be that micromanager. Let them make the decisions they can make. If they've been given this position, you have to have some confidence that they are competent to do the work. Let them do it. And finally, encourage staff then to take greater responsibility in the organization. And that will then be a part of inspiring that top-level performance. So this has just been a brief look at what not to do and what to do. And if you look at that, it's almost the two sides of the same coin. I hope you'll go back through, look again at those flawed leaderships, and see if you see any of those that you might have a tendency towards, and then look at the other side of those on the competencies and think how you can then mitigate those or how you can build on the other strengths. And look at the other ones, look at the other competencies. What are the ones that you really have, that you're really strong about, and build on those. And the ones that you need to work on, you can do that. So again, leadership comes in many forms, there's many aspects to it, and I hope this will give you some insights into that.